Greetings, nerds and fellow Trekkers. This is Will Polk, host of Senior Nerd Presents Blur Trek. Thank you for joining me on this episode with the latest from the Star Trek universe for those fans who want to stay up to date. The week of May 20th, 2024 was very full in the Star Trek universe as we celebrated the Cisco Day on May 22nd, and now I am setting a course to Newsland to navigate three significant items. First up, in what could be a big loss for the Star Trek universe and a big win for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU, or Marvel Television Universe, as they have rebranded it on Disney Plus, is that Terry Matalas, who was the showrunner for Star Trek Picard Season 3, was hired to be the showrunner for an untitled Vision show on Disney Plus. That show is currently scheduled to be released sometime in 2026. This show is the second spin-off of the very popular show WandaVision. So you ask, why is this a big loss for Star Trek? Well, this could have some major impacts on a potential spin-off show from Star Trek Picard that fans, cast, and crew, including Terry himself, all want, which is called Star Trek Legacy. Well, there are some spoilers ahead for Star Trek Picard Season 3, so if you haven't watched it yet, you may want to jump ahead to the next story. So now, spoilers about the background on Star Trek Legacy. At the end of Star Trek Picard Season 3, we see Captain 7 of 9, Commander Raffi, Jack Crusher, Crash LaForge, and others all on board the rechristened Titan, now USS Enterprise, NCC 1701-G. An end credit that we had at the end of the show shows that while in his quarters on the ship, Ensign Jack Crusher was approached by Q, who revealed that while the trial of humanity was over for John Luke, it had only just begun for his son, Jack. So that is what set up the potential for this spinoff with the Last Generation, as they were called in the season and series finale of Star Trek Picard. So that is what was the genesis of the idea of Star Trek Legacy. As I noted, everyone is on board with it. And let's quickly do a background on Vision from WandaVision, just to tell you about what Terry Matalas' character is going to be on this new show. So again, this is spoiler. So if you haven't watched some of the Marvel content, you may want to jump ahead, or if you don't care, I'm going to share a little bit about Vision. So Vision's a character who was part of the early phases of the MCU. Of course, he's a comic book character as well. And this character died in Infinity War when they were fighting Thanos. And however, he was brought back to life in the show WandaVision by a hex that Wanda had created a town called Westview. And so Wanda was dealing with issues of grief and her loss of her loved Vision. Meanwhile, SWORD, an organization that is protecting Earth, took the original Vision's remains and rebuilt them into White Vision. So what we had at the end of this series was the Hex Vision and White Vision, both of them fought, and they came to an understanding with the great the ship of Thesis as far as what made either of them the true Vision. And they came to understanding that was based on their memories and past experience. The Hex Vision was pressed to control on the forehead of the White Vision, allowing for the past data and experiences of Hex Vision to go into White Vision. He saw Vision's time as an Avenger and his love for Wanda. And so at the end of the series, White Vision uttered the words, quote, "I am Vision," before flying out of Westview. So that's the background on Vision. So what does this all have to do with the new show? So on May 22nd, also the Cisco Day of 2024, the trade Variety reported that the series would be premiering in 2026 and that Terry Matalas had been hired as a showrunner for this new untitled Vision show. Now, previously, there have been reports that Jack Schaefer, who was the original showrunner and executive producer of WandaVision, was going to do this spinoff and had been previously called Vision Quest as a possible adaptation of the comic of the same name. However, According to Variety, that has been scrapped in favor of Terry Matalas' vision, no pun intended, and aligns with the new vision, again, no pun intended, of Marvel Studios has had with their series in Phase 6. So the question is this the end now of our Star Trek Legacy show? Well, it might not be, and it might be, but not necessarily for the reason of this new show. Some of the things that may impact Star Trek Legacy is the bigger picture of the uncertainty of the ownership of Paramount Studios. And so Paramount has been approached by Sony, Skydance, and others to be acquired. Business uncertainty may lead to many projects being stalled, even though, of course, whoever acquires the studio is going to have a big IP in Star Trek, and I'm sure they will definitely mine it for all it's worth, but does that necessarily mean Star Trek Legacy would be one of those items? Another thing that could be an issue is labor issues. We're just 1 year removed from the writer's strike and also the actor's strike. And of course, in 2026, the collective agreements will be up for negotiations again. We're still seeing ongoing issues that were big sticking points with generative AI and also declining revenues as far as the entertainment industry as they adapt to the new streaming environment and other things as well. So any of those issues could also cause production delays and delays of announcements for new shows. So just wanted to put those business items out there as far as things for fans to be aware of as we look for not only things for Star Trek, but also other shows as well. But could it still happen? Yes, it could. Creators are all behind it. Both Terry Matalas, several of the actors, and even Alex Kurtzman, who oversees all of Star Trek television production, have said on the record that they, in many articles in the trades, and also including that big article that Variety did on the future of Star Trek, and also in Star Trek fan publications and websites and other things, that they want this series to go forward. Also, the studio is behind it. In March, Paramount Global CEO George Cheeks told the publication Vulture that Star Trek remains one of the most important franchises for Paramount Global and Paramount Plus specifically. He also noted that there's great opportunity with the franchise, but it's really about the cadence and timeline of it all as far as Star Trek Legacy. So even though they don't want to put too many things out there all at once to oversaturate the market. But Cheeks again gave us a vote of confidence in Alex Kurtzman as far as he has a long-range vision of planning across the franchise and trying to figure out what the proper cadence for dropping new Star Trek series are. So I know we as fans, we want to really get everything now, but we also don't want to go the route of some other well-known franchises, like, for example, the MCU, where you have too much all at once, and it begins to lose some of its specialists. So of course, that means that there's a tremendous opportunity here with the Star Trek franchise. But another factor that does still give us hope that Legacy could happen is that Terry's schedule could also allow for him to do both. Again, as I noted before, the series, the Vision series is slated to begin in 2026. So production will probably have to start sometime this year. Paul Bettany is also, who plays Vision, is back on board. So production could start as early as this year, probably, and also go into next year if they're looking for a 2026 release date. So given that series would be done, and if all the stars and everything aligns, Terry could still do Star Trek Legacy if, hypothetically, we get a green light for that series. Basically, maybe it would mean that it would probably be produced in 2026 or 27, but it's still a possibility. So even with all the uncertainty with the studio ownership, it still could be greenlit. There's tremendous fan support, and even though Star Trek Discovery and Lower Decks are ending their runs, we haven't given a green light for the Star Trek Academy series, which I'll talk about here in a moment. The Section 31 movie with Michelle Yeoh is coming. A fourth season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds has been greenlit, even though season 3 hasn't even aired yet. And we do have 2 potential feature films that I'll also talk about in this video that are potentially coming down the pipeline. So for now, I would say that the sky is not falling on Star Trek Legacy. It is still a possibility, but we just have to be patient. So before going to our next story, I'd like for you to do a big favor for us here on the channel and hit that like button on this video, and also hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you never miss an episode of Cine Nerd Presents Blur Trek or our main Cine Nerd podcast. We cover everything from the latest in comic book TV shows and movies, Star Trek, Star Wars, House of the Dragon, and other sci-fi related genre shows, and other shows too sometimes that are very interesting as well, like Shogun. So please do that, and also leave a comment on this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what I just discussed with this story as far as Star Trek Legacy, and it really helps drive the discussion here on our podcast, as well as giving the YouTube algorithm signals that you guys are enjoying what we do here. So thank you so much for doing that. Now, turning to the second story on our video this week is the aforementioned Star Trek Academy. So, Holly Hunter, who won the Oscar in 1993 for a role as Ada McGrath in the 1993 drama film The Piano, has been cast in this show. Fans also may recognize her from the 2016 film Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, and also as the voice of Miss Incredible in the 2 Incredible films. She was cast as Captain and Chancellor of the Academy in this new show. Now, what do we know about this show? So, in the release from StarTrek.com, the show is noted to be one where the Captain and Chancellor of Starfleet Academy who is played by Hunter, and will focus on the adventures of the new class of Starfleet cadets as they come of age in one of the most legendary places of the galaxy. Show is also going to be created and produced by CBS Studios, and the series is slated to begin production this summer. Now, the release also notes that Starfleet Academy introduces viewers to a young group of cadets who come together to pursue a common dream of hope and optimism. Under the watchful and demanding eyes of their instructors, they discover what it takes to be Starfleet officers as they navigate blossoming friendships, explosive rivalries, first loves, and a new enemy that threatens both the Academy and the Federation itself, end quote. So, looks like it's going to be Star Trek in college. So we still have several details that we still don't know what's going to happen. At South by Southwest earlier this year, television's producer Alex Kurtzman, who's behind all the Star Trek productions, slated that this show is again slated to begin this summer, and it probably at the earliest could be on air is 2026. Also, we still have yet to get what time period this show is set in. Many people have speculated that it's going to be in the same timeline as Star Trek Discovery, given that we've seen how Tilly, who was one of the characters on that show, was assigned to the Academy in that series. And we even had a full episode about some of her adventures at the Academy with some of the cadets. And so, and even with the current season, she is still assigned to the Academy, even though she goes back to the Discovery to help Burnham with their last adventure. So my personal view is that I am curious about what Star Trek in college is going to be like. Of course, we've heard all of these characters talk about their time in the Academy and all iterations of Star Trek. We've also briefly seen the Academy in Star Trek 2009, where we had the adventures of Kirk, Spock, Uhura, McCoy, and the rest of the crew there on the campus at the beginning of that film. So we shall see. It could go really well. It could go really bad. But I will say that one recent franchise that I really enjoy, The Boys, has also taken this approach with their show Gen V, which just concluded its first season. And sadly, one of the cast members recently passed away in a tragic incident. But the show is going ahead for its second season, and it could really, really work well. That show was one that you really didn't have to be a fan or have watched the prior seasons of The Boys to really get into what the whole franchise is about and what that universe is about. So that is something that Kurtzman did note in his South by Southwest interview too, is that it can be very daunting for fans to try to come into a 60-year-old franchise with such a deep lore of Star Trek. I know my partner on the podcast here, Sarah Belmont, that was one of the things that was a challenge for her when we were reviewing Star Trek Picard, is because, for me as a longtime fan, I'm steeped in the lore. But for her, it was very difficult to come into Star Trek because it just felt like she was having to play such catch up. So that can be a barrier to entry for new fans. So hopefully this show will take that approach as well, that it could be an entryway for new audiences to come into the Star Trek franchise. And also, it could also be satisfying for long-term fans like many of us who are watching this video, and me as a fan talking to you about this new show, because we've all had different on-ramps to Star Trek, whether it was the original series, DS9, TNG, other shows in the Roddenberry, Burma era, or New Trek in the Paramount Plus Kelvin era, starting in 2009, and of course when Discovery started on Paramount Plus. So hopefully this show will be one that will be accessible for new fans, but also enjoyed by old fans. Let me know your thoughts about Star Trek Starfleet Academy in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And do you like the idea of having a series try to serve multiple visions and multiple fans of the Star Trek franchise? Our final story today is about Star Trek on the big screen. That's right. We have word that a producer by the name of Simon Kinberg, who oversaw most of the X-Men films for 20th Century Fox, is in talks to produce an upcoming Star Trek movie for Paramount Pictures. This was first reported by The Hollywood Reporter and also confirmed by other trades. What it is not is the final film of the Kelvin timeline, but this one is a prequel that is set in a time after First Contact and also explored during the very underrated Star Trek Enterprise. So just to give you a little bit of background about Kinberg, he started his career as a screenwriter, penning 2005's XXX State of the Union, and also the Brad Pitt and Angelina film Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Also, he joined the X-Men franchise as a screenwriter in the X-Men The Last Stand before transitioning to produce every subsequent X-Men film, good, bad, and in between. And he had his directorial debut with the final movie in that franchise, 2019's Dark Phoenix. He also produced The Martian, as well as Fantastic Four, and the first two Deadpool movies. And his most recent project has been the Netflix film that's coming up this year, Life, that starred Kevin Hart. So what we do know about this prequel movie is that it has already gotten a director, Toby Haynes, who is part of the Star Wars universe and directed some great episodes of Andor, and also the Star Trek inspired episodes of Black Mirror. It also has a writer, Seth Grahame-Smith, who is the screenwriter for Abraham Lincoln, The Vampire Hunter. Also, Kinberg was also a producer of that update as far as what's going on with that film project. Before moving on to my thoughts about that film, I just wanted to again note that the fourth Kelvin movie starring Chris Pine, Zoe Saldana, Zach Quinto, etc., is still in the works, and it definitely is hopefully to be made. It has gone through multiple writers, directors, most recent, but they have finally gotten someone to write the script, the flight attendant Steve Yockey, and also film is looking for a director because it lost WandaVision's Matt Shakman back to Marvel to produce the Fantastic Four. So we're seeing a lot of interwebs with Star Trek and Marvel universes here. But just my thoughts on the film. Sadly, Star Trek is becoming one of those things that is getting like the Star Wars franchise as far as films and TV shows and that kind of stuff. And that how many films and movies have we and stories have we gotten tossed out there? I mean, hell, we even had Quentin Tarantino talking about doing one. But we will see what happens. That's a topic for another podcast, and maybe I'll do one day. But what are your thoughts about this as well, nerds? As far as the film itself that Kinberg is coming up to produce, I do wonder where they're going to go with this because, as I noted in my intro about his background and about this film, we have Star Trek First Contact when we with the crew of the Next Generation, and we had the origins of the Federation and Starfleet, at least the Earth Starfleet, in Star Trek Enterprise, and then of course we see that at the end of that series, we get the big speech by that maybe that's where they'll pick up from is what happens after Archer gives his speech at the end of Star Trek Enterprise as we see him walking out to the assembly there on Earth. So a lot of thoughts there on that I have about this. I'm hoping they'll do something new and interesting and not try to retcon things just for the big screen, but really honor what has been done before, but hopefully build upon that. Of course, we have the Romulan War that was also part of that. This could be a part that could be explored. It's been pitched as an origin story, but to me, I'm like we've had origins. We've already had our Star Trek origin story, so hopefully they don't bastardize that and retcon it, but gives us something deeper and a new story that explores that time period between Enterprise and Discovery and Strange New Worlds. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear them. I'm sure you as fans have a lot of thoughts about these ideas. And also, do you think the Kelvin movie will ever get made? Okay. That is all for Cena Nerd Presents Blur Trek News Roundup this week. A few weeks ago, I posted on our social media channels about a future Blur Trek project that I'm working on, which is a Q&A from you about your questions about any of the in or out of universe items that I can answer about the Star Trek universe. And I would love to get your questions. So shoot them in the comments below. Also, email our show or post them in our social media channels as far as what questions you have, and I'll be sure to collate them and put them in the video. I'm also still toying with doing a season review of Star Trek Discovery this summer, but in the meantime, be sure to catch our main Cena Nerd podcast with our host, Sarah Beaumont. We are finishing up our review of X-Men 97 with the final 3 episodes this week, and in June, we'll be reviewing Star Wars The Acolyte, doing a recap of Season 2 of The Bear, which also premieres in June, House of the Dragon, and The Boys both premiere in June, and we'll be covering those shows on our podcast. So be sure to subscribe, like, and comment, and follow us or share. Follow our crew on Twitter at Cena Nerd and SNN Blur Trek. Find us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram and Threads at scene_n_nerd, and our website at www.scenanerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Blur Trek signing out. Live long and prosper.